objects in programming are essential for you to build great applications. You already know the concept of variables. So if you stick with me for a few minutes, I will tell you that objects are internally just a variable, but they have a slightly different operation and slightly different usage. So I'm going to explain the problem first in an example, and then let that example to tell you why we need objects in programming in general. So if you remember previously, I told you to create a variable or an array that contains a list of numbers, right? So it was var numbers equal 1, 2, 3, and we've done a lot of operations on this using for loop. We calculated the sum of them, and it was fun. Perfect. If I told you now, create a list of users. Well, you might say, well, that's easy. Let's create a list of users using an array, and let's store their names. Let's say Salim, Sam, Sven, Khalid, and that's it, right? So that's correct. Okay, what if I told you, this what if always the problem. What if I told you that I need to store more information, not only names. I need to store for each user the name, username, email, password, and probably different fields. Can you do that? Well, if you think about it, you already know how to create variables, you already know how to create containers, which is the array. Then how can you store more than a variable, more than a content, or more than an item in one place? We know that array is a list of items. These items can be, strings, numbers, whatever it is. Can we do that? Like, can we say like the first one is Salim, and then the second one is Salim at laymoon.com, for example? That's okay, but this does not give me a good structure for the data. We need a better data structure, and that's why we need objects. So objects is a variable that you're already familiar with, but with a slightly different syntax and slightly different operation in the code. So an object, basically, it's a collection of data. It's a container for more than one type of data. In variable, you can store only one type. So if I told you var equal name, and then you can say, well, Salim, right? Or probably var age is equal to 26 integers, okay, integer. But what if I want to store both name, email, all of them, both name, email, password, age, all of them in one place? How can we do that in a variable? Well, we cannot do it in a normal variable, but we can do it in an object. And before I illustrate the concept of object, let me tell you the definition of object. Objects are containers for data in one unit. So if you want to create a user, we do this syntax. We say user in general, and then we assign the data to it however we want. So how to do it? We open and close curly braces, and in between we provide a key value. The key is normally represents something that you need to store, like name, age, email, password, all that stuff. So we'll start with the name, and then colon, and then you provide the name. So for example, Salim. Okay, we want to store the age. That's fine. Add a comma, and then go to the second line, or in the same line, just separate them with a comma, and then follow the same syntax, key and value. Let's store age. Age is 26. Move on. Let's say email. Salim@example.com. Okay, so you see now, in one unit, in one container, we stored a bunch of data in the same place. All right, that is object. Now, object concept is slightly bigger than this, but I just want you to understand why we need objects at the first place, and then I will give you more insights on it by providing more examples. All right, so going back to this example, what we can do, basically, we can write this user as one line, like so, and then that is the user one, correct? User one. Okay, if I want to store more than a user in the same array, then what I have to do is create a variable, which is an object for each user, and each user will contain several different information, like this. So user 2 might be Sam, age is 20, email is sam@example.com. Now I can replace this array and replace it with user 1, user 2, and users 3, 4, up to n. So now if I told you, give me the name of the first user in this array. Okay, that's simple. So we say, how to access the data? We say console.log. We know that we have an array of users. Then we say users. And if we want to access the first user, we know that it starts from 0. If we do that, look at the console. It prints out the entire object of the first user. So it says name, age, email, printed to the console. If I want only the name, then I can access that by two ways. I can access it by an array shape like this. Come on, name. This will give me the name of the first user in that array, or a better syntax can be with a dot operator and then access the property which is inside that, the name directly. So imagine it's like this. It's like user1.name. This will give me Salim, right? User2.name will give me Sam. And if I want to get that from the users array, then I have to access that first using the index, and then .name. If I want the second user, change that to 1. This will give me Sam. And then I can play with this data according to my requirement. So here I can access the age, I can access the email, anything I want. In one unit, I can store multiple information. Now I told you before that object is more than just storing key value pair. Objects is used also to store properties and methods. Methods is just a function, but when the function is inside the object, we call it method. So I pulled this article or this page from W3 School to give you more insights about objects and why we use them. In real life, a car object is like this. It has properties and methods. It has a car name, model, weight, color. These are properties. We can define them in the same way that we defined, where is that? We defined our user, name, age, email. The same thing we can say, well, define a car and then name, model, weight, color, so on and so forth. We can have more than one data in the same place. And the beauty of this, we can mix and match. Like here in the second user, probably we can add a password. Password is, let's say, sam@123, right? The first user doesn't have to follow that structure. It's flexible and independent. And that's really powerful. So here we know already about the properties, but we can also have methods inside the user, inside the object. So a car can start, can drive, can brake, can stop. That's from real world example. But we don't have a car. We have something else, like a user. We can print the full name. So imagine we have first name, okay, is Salim. Then we have last name is Haddad, okay. Same thing for Sam. Let's say Sam is the first name. Last name is D, for example. Sam D, okay. Then if I want to get the full name, right, which is the combination between first name and last name, let me remove the second user. We don't need that. Let me remove this array. And then here I want to get the full name. So what I can do is say user1 or user, let's name it user, user.firstname plus space plus user.lastname. And every time I want to get the full name, I have to do this, right? And it's a tedious process. Imagine I have to do it in 10 places, then I have to repeat this code multiple places. And if I want to change the full name to be in a different shape, probably like this, if I want to change it like Salim plus Haddad, then in that case I have to change it in all places that I have implemented in, which is not good. It's not scalable. What we can do in this case, we can add method to that object, and that method, we can do anything inside it. It's a dynamic operation. It's a dynamic function that we can do. Okay, let's have an example of getting the full name. So we have the first name, we have the last name, we have an email, and then we want to have the full name. Of course, we can't do a full name and then store that as Salim Haddad, but that's a duplication in data. We don't want that, okay? So what we can do, we can compute this on demand. For example, what we can do is say full name is a function, I'm going to use the arrow syntax, is a function that will return that string for me, right? So that will return, for example, Salim Haddad. In this case, I no longer need, I have to use this syntax. I can use user dot first name, full name, like so. This will give me the function, and I can call it. This will give me the full name. But again, I'm hard coding the values here. We want to have them dynamically. Okay, how to do that? We will use something new, is called this. If we just want to use like first name, I will show you, first name plus space plus last name, this will not work. You will see. Unquote reference first name is not defined. Well, of course, because this is a different scope than this one, than this object. So in order to access this first name property in that object, we have to use this keyword. This dot, this means this will refer to the object itself. So we are saying, give me the first name from this object, from here. So it will go get the first name from here, which is Salim. Then add that to an empty space, and then same thing for the last name. We say this dot last name. That will give me, well, I think we can't use arrow function for that. We can use normal function. Yeah, we can't use arrow function. We can use function, normal function only. And I think the reason is that this will not be applicable inside the scope of the arrow function, so we cannot use that. So here we can see the function must be in a function type, not arrow type. So you can see here the example method is a function stored as a property, like so. So we cannot use arrow syntax. Okay, so at any time now I can change this to be plus. This will be reflected anywhere that is using this function, full name. And it's a normal function, we can call it, right? It's a normal call function. Perfect. Now we have a very powerful data structure to store more than data type in one place. Plus, we have the ability to have methods inside that class.